My name's Amanda Garrie and I'm a postgrad student and PTHP lecturer here at the University of Portsmouth. I'm in the final stages of a PhD in praxis, within which I'm writing a novel. Hello. The first thing you'll have noticed is that I'm old. That is, quite old, but not done yet. The image you've just seen was taken at age 11, but first, a bit about me before then. When starting school, I struggled, and after 2 years, I had no more than 5 written words I could recognise. Words on a page made no sense to me, and it was clear I learned differently. My teacher was young, lovely, and patient, but these were the days when pregnant women still had to leave teaching and not return until their children were grown. Her replacement, an older woman, had left the profession on marriage, as was still required in some counties right up to the Second World War. Widowed, and with a change in the rules, she'd decided to return. Not being able to learn words was frustrating, as I loved stories. Fortunately, my father was determined to help, and we tried many methods. After an intensive 3 weeks, one summer holidays, I found I could read anything. And I did, devouring my older brother's collection of books. I became versed in the practices of war heroes. I was the fighter, Biggles. I was the horse-backed adventurer bringing justice to the Wild West. I was the policeman who kept people safe and collared robbers even on my days off. I'd not yet learned of Boudica, Joan of Arc, or Amazonian women, but there was nothing I couldn't do. Learning to read meant I soon became a top student, passing the 11+ exam. Everyone felt proud of me. I was a hard worker and bound to do well at grammar school, except I didn't. My village-based education had been old-fashioned. I was a whiz at fractions, but I'd never heard of decimals. Similarly, in French, I'd learned to count to 10 and the days of the week by rote, but had not seen the words written down. School transfer forms, however, had me as intermediate, and placed in a middle set and expected to know the rudiments. I was cast back to my inability to perform around written language. There were surely other areas in which I could excel. My father had taught me practical skills, wood turning, draftsmanship, silversmithing, basic wiring. I was good at art. At the end of our first term, we were given forms allowing us to choose what would replace our introductory classes. I chose technical drawing, as architecture seemed appealing, and woodwork so I could hone my carpentry skills. In these areas, I'd be ahead of the game. "You're a girl," I was told. I'd ignored the male-female list headings. Being placed in girls' subjects was disappointing, but I looked for wins in other areas as I moved up the years. Girls' sciences allowed only botany, human biology, or biology. I wanted to do physics. I rallied other girls and took a deputation to the school principal. We were turned away, but we didn't all concede. Going on strike and refusing to attend the biology classes, in the end, 5 of us were allowed to sit at the back of the physics labs. We could only observe the experiments and were discouraged from asking questions. Nonetheless, 3 of us went on to study it at GCE O-level. The first girls in the school to do so. The following year, girls were admitted to chemistry lessons as well as physics, 2 senior mistresses taking up the cudgel on behalf of all gym-slipped students. Sadly, my early dreams being dashed turned me from being a model student into one who no longer thrived. I left school at the earliest opportunity, working in traditional female employment as a nanny. I returned to education to formalise qualifications in that area, but hardly fulfilled. I married at 19, working in a factory making clutch plates for tanks to get the money to do so. I worked alongside men, And although women's pay was 20% lower than theirs, it was useful money. On marrying, we moved to a new area. My husband didn't want me to work. Many didn't back then, but I defied him, getting myself a job in a furniture factory and applying to the civil service. I worked as a pattern maker, using those technical drawing skills from my childhood. I was soon, though, accepted into the Ministry of Defence as a clerical assistant and put forward for civil service exams, the results of which were sent to the big boss, who called me to his office. He told me being in the top 2% meant I was eligible for the diplomatic service, that I would move to London and undergo training, that I could travel the world, have an exciting life. So I asked if my husband would also be transferred. That question changed everything. If I chose, they would assist me in obtaining a divorce, but as a woman in the service, being married was not an option. I was shocked, thinking how not much had changed for women despite our burning our bras. Needless to say, I didn't take up the offer, instead choosing promotions, then leaving, as dictated on the birth of my son. Such experiences give you mettle. My children were young when I enrolled at Portsmouth Polytechnic for a degree in cultural studies. I did the work through the night when the rest of the household were in bed. Gaining a 2-1 though, I went on to become a teacher in English. As an early adopter of new technology, having a ZX Spectrum, I'd learned basic programming from the array of magazines available. My first salary checks saw me buy a computer, and I set out to learn how to use it. My evolving knowledge gave me an edge in the workplace, and I was allowed to use a new bank of computers to teach word processing, then publishing skills, to my English students. The results were good, and the school took on media studies as a subject, one of the first in the country to do so. This empowered particularly the girls who rarely chose computer studies but excelled at media. I made sure all coursework had a practical element. Students made their own films, recorded radio programs, took their own photographs to create magazines on topics of their own choosing. This was in a school that did not generally achieve well, but skills enhancement and enthusiasm meant these students, male and female, gained grades above the national average. One year, I had a cohort successfully complete A-level film studies, aged 15, alongside their GCSE media. This brought us to the attention of the exam board, who gave me a job travelling the country training teachers, and the school sent me on a course for paperless learning. As for the students, many became the first in their families to go to college, and several went on to university. They'd learned it was possible, that they could. Sadly, new management removed media studies from our school curriculum. I removed myself. Now, I'm here pursuing new dreams. I have an MA with distinction in creative writing, have part-time lecturer status, am a director of Portsmouth Writers Hub, and part of Portsmouth, a university group creating a tourist app for the city. I'm a facilitator for Tarticulation, Portsmouth's poetry and prose spoken word troupe, and was, last year, awarded the role of Poet in Residence for the city's Library and Archive Service. This was a funded position courtesy of Arts Council England. I make no bones about the fact I'm not the best poet in Portsmouth, far from it. What I brought to the post, though, was the ability to communicate via social media, to create promo films, advertising the workshops, and to put together electronic presentations. I could teach and was versatile and up to date. I think the biggest lessons I've learned as a woman are, don't let yourself be thwarted. If a gate closes, push harder on the next. Don't be fixed on one goal, but give yourself the potential for many. Shift focus if you need to. Be the best you can be at whatever you do, and the solutions will likely find you. Don't let others define what you can or cannot do. I'd also recommend, when things become stale, reinvent yourself. You'll find it's energizing, and I'm hoping it means I'll live longer too. And finally, 2 pieces I wrote for a spoken word event on strong women a couple of years ago. Boudica. No goddess here, no status kept beyond the years when merchants slept in beds where Roman largesse bloomed. Your husband dead, your power subsumed, you dared to speak, to challenge raw the strictures laid by Roman law. They stripped you then, Iceni bride, took your 2 daughters, flayed your pride, parted half your flesh from skin, exercised their vile excess, then cast you 3 like runes to ground, humbled there, of minds unsound. But woman, queen, angry, proud, saw vengeance clear in stormy cloud, waited time, planned, then scored when Roman armies were abroad. Sacked the towns they'd razed to trade, made them the victims of tirade, showed no mercy, laid down all, broke the 9th, you back from Gaul. Then, lured into a wood-rimmed valley, fought strongly, vainly, tried to rally, lost 80,000 to the slaughter, avenging Britain and her daughters. Their resting place is not yet found, but where it is hallowed ground, where lies a mighty woman, brave, in simple, earthen, shallow grave. And finally, Amazonian women. The Amazons were always the women of my choice. They didn't sit demurely, and if they ever thought it, they always gave it voice. These were tribal women who did it for themselves, not maiden aunts and winsome girls sat at home on shelves. These were female models to fashion myself on, not the clothes-pegged dolly birds, but women who possessed their words with behaviour brave and bold, not simpering wives and daughters simply doing what they're told. They drew bows and arrows and sang their hero songs, winning all their battles against their enemy throngs. The poets always told us they stood all warrior tests, and to better pull the bowstring, cut off their left breasts. The images on pots, though, from Thessaly to Crete, had them wearing armour with bodies quite complete. Love, it was their downfall in each story, we are told. But the truth seems to be different, and they lived quite equal lives, not as submissive women or subordinated wives, but still as battle heroes who fought their husbands' foes. Now, many thought this was all myth, and such women had not been, but on the remote Ural steppes in 1917, a cache of graves was plundered out near Kazakhstan, and in each found a woman taller than a man, who had with her her armour and arrows and a bow, and treasures that remarked that they'd lived side by side with those they'd come to love, with no gender divide. Thank you.